Hello and what's going on? Hope you guys are having a good day and thanks for checking out this video. So today I'm working on an 86 Mustang GT, as you can see behind me. This thing is pretty sweet. The customer bought this last year sometime, and he actually brought it in last summer. He was having an issue with it. It just wasn't running too well. And we ended up getting it straightened out for him. Thing was running great at that point. So this time he ended up having to have it towed here, and I guess he was hitting it at a high RPM there, hitting some gears, and it just shut off on him. So I finally got a chance to get in here and check it out, and I'll show you what I found.
Welcome to the Savage Productions YouTube channel.
I found the distributor not turning when I was cranking the motor over. So when I pulled it out, let me show you here. The distributor gear, you got a pin that goes through the gear and goes through the shaft on the distributor. That pin has sheared off. You can spin this. It's a little hard, I'd have to hold both ends, but you can spin this gear on the shaft. So that tells me that the oil pump locked up, which it did. I put my socket down there on the oil pump shaft. It's got an ARP oil pump shaft, I can tell from the top, and it won't turn. I cannot turn that oil pump at all. The shaft, I can move the shaft around in there, so the shaft isn't stuck. Now that could have saved his motor. If the oil pump locked up, most likely there's something inside the oil pump that just got sandwiched between the gears, most likely. I drained the oil out, no shavings, no nothing came out of here. The magnet was totally clean on the oil pan, on the plug. So not really sure. I'm dropping the oil pan on this thing is what I'm doing, and then I'm going to remove the oil pump. I want to take the cover off the oil pump. I want to see what I see. So since the oil pump locked up, it's a good thing that it sheared the pin off on that gear and killed the motor right away. I'm sure it twisted the oil pump shaft. You know, the 351s are a lot bigger than the 302s. Thank God it didn't break the oil pump shaft and continue running and then wiped out the main bearings and the rod bearings and all that. In this case, it shut down right away. So that's actually a good thing right there. So this is basically what I'm doing is, since I didn't see any metal shavings or anything like that, it's a 50-50 shot, but I think he's going to be okay on the bearings and all that since it shut down right away. So I chose to go ahead and drop the engine cradle. Instead of pulling the motor out, I can have this oil pan off a lot faster than if I pulled the motor out. So that's why I've got the engine support here. I've already got the steering shaft unhooked from the rack and pinion. I've got the rack and pinion hanging. I still have the hoses and all hooked up, so I didn't have to drain it. And I've just got it hanging. I've got it strapped up to the radiator support. So I've already removed the one spring on the passenger side, and I'm fixing to remove the spring on the driver's side. Once I remove that, then I'll be able to basically use my tranny jack here and just lower the engine cradle down. Once I get that out of there, then I can just take the oil pan and drop it right down. There's not really enough room. If I was to support the motor and lower the cradle down as far as I can without taking it out, there's still not enough room to get this oil pan out of there because it has an aftermarket bell housing. It's got a TKO transmission in it. I can't tell, I can't see the numbers, but it's definitely a TKO. So it has a bulletproof bell housing, you know, which is, they're big. So there's just not enough room to get this oil pan, you know, out of there. So I'm gonna just drop the cradle, drop the oil pan, and see what we can see. Okay, so I got the oil pan off. I went ahead and, like I told you before, that's the engine cradle, K-member, whatever you want to call it. I got it strapped to the transmission jack over there. Lowered it down. Got the oil pan off. As you can see, this actually isn't even touching nothing here. I just got it sitting there just in case. I've got the engine support up there. So let me show you. I did find some debris inside the oil pump. This part here actually was laying in the bottom of the oil pan. This almost looks like a metal shim or spacer that would be inside a gasket. A lot of times you'll get, you know, valve cover gaskets that may be a cork or a rubber or something, and they'll have this piece where the bolts go through so it doesn't crush the gasket by over tightening them. That's possible what that is. That was in the bottom of the oil pan, and this was actually stuck inside the oil pump pickup tube. So you have a screen in there that really kind of keeps debris from going through there. I mean, sure, if you have a small enough piece of something, it may work its way through that screen, but it's got to be pretty small. So this metal plate right here, I could hear something dangling around in there when I was shaking it, and that's what I found right there. And then these two pieces, they were actually stuck in the oil pump. And if you look at this piece, you know, it's rounded. And then you look at this. I'm pretty sure it's even the same thickness. So I'm pretty sure that whatever that used to be, it was that. So this must have got tangled up in the motor somewhere, got broke all apart, and then a small enough piece got sucked up through and in between the screen. Which, you really look at that, them holes are small. I don't see how this got sucked up in there, but those two were stuck inside this pump. And obviously the pump sits like that, it spins, and of course it's inside a housing, which here's the oil pump housing. And you can, I won't show you, but it's got some scarring going in there, but this is, it basically got jammed in between here and there. And if you look at it, it made a few revolutions before it got stuck. You can see the damage there. It is on all four corners. And that's why I couldn't turn it, because there was actually a couple pieces wedged in here and in here, and I had to beat this out. Everything was stuck together. Now another thing, this little wire here, that was inside here as well, and it had already made its way through this hole, but not all the way. And there's another one that's in there. I spread this up, I got a screwdriver and pried this up, and I could see it up in there, stuck down into the screen. And I reached in there and I tried to grab it out, I can't get it out. And I tell you what that looks like. That looks like what's a piece of, I'll show you. I got one right here. A wire wheel. This is a brand new one. You can see all these little wires here. That's exactly what that is, I'm pretty sure. So what we use these for, they're over here on the tire machine. Whenever I take a tire off a wheel, a lot of time the bead will be really dirty on the wheel, on the rim. We just hook this to our drill and we clean the bead around the rim. If you don't, then you'll have, a lot of times the tire will leak down. So we use these to clean that. That's why it's there. And here's a used one. It's all wore out. But surely somebody did not clean a gasket material off of this motor with one of them. That's a big no-no. You never want to use this to clean gasket. Let's say you took an intake off a car and you need to clean the material off of the head, the engine block. You don't never use nothing like that, because you will lose them and get down inside the motor. And I'll show you what, usually you can just use a razor blade and scrape it off, but we typically use these. And a lot of times you don't want to use these either, because the fragments of this will also get down in the motor and eat up bearings if it gets mixed in with the oil. So usually what I do is I just get a razor blade, scrape it off, clean it off real good. That's it. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I took the main cap off of number one. Let me get the flashlight. Main bearing looks good. Number one main cap right there is the first thing that actually gets oil from an oil pump. It gets sucked up into the oil pump, it goes through the filter, comes out of the filter, and that's the first thing it sees right there, that first main cap. So I took this off. Bearing looks great, there's no damage at all, and so there's no sense in pulling the rest of the bearings off. There's just no sense in it. I've already checked everything looks good about that. So yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. It's a stock oil pump, stock replacement oil pump. It's a Melling oil pump, stock volume, stock pressure. So we definitely need a new oil pump. Got to get another oil pan gasket. All right, I'm gonna kind of show you what I've done so far on this. I'm ready to start throwing this thing back together, but got everything cleaned up. There was as you remember, there was a piece of wire stuck inside here, and there was two of them. One I was able to get out, the other one was actually stuck in that screen, and I was able to get it out, and I've got everything flushed out real good on that. I went ahead and put this back on. It didn't damage the shaft or nothing, which really got lucky there since this was spinning on the shaft. But I got it back on. I got the roll pin back in, all cleaned up, ready to go on. I've checked this out really good. There's no damage, no twisting, nothing on that shaft, so it's good to go. So yeah, I am ready to throw it back together. I got the everything cleaned up. Throw that intake back on. I got it laying over there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on it. I'm making good progress. I've got the K-member or engine cradle, whichever way you want to call it. I got it already back in there. Of course, before that, I got the oil pan on. Oil pump, pickup is in there. Yeah, so it's actually going pretty good. I had to do some a little bit of wire cleanup up under the driver's side fender well. So they had the stock coil mounted up underneath the driver's side fender well, and they had a long coil wire. This thing was really long. They had it going through the back hole of the inner fender behind the strut tower on the driver's side and running all the way over to the distributor. So it's kind of, you don't really want wires, a coil wire running through a whole mess of wires. So what we did is we replaced the coil, and I'll show you once I lower the car down, I'll show you where I mounted it. It looks pretty good. It's right there by the MSD box. And then of course we've got another coil wire that I'll make up. That way it won't be so long. And also, while I had the engine cradle out, we replaced the steering shaft with a universal steering shaft. This one is a stock one, and what they've done is they cut the end of it off and then they welded on a universal steering knuckle that did fit the rack and pinion. The problem is it was too long, and this whole section, let me show you. This whole section here, see, you've got splines right there. Below here is all smooth. There's no splines there. So this shaft shouldn't have been any longer than that. Well, this whole it was sticking way down here, like it was too long. So the splines inside the knuckle was not even on the splines on the shaft, and they had the set screw tightened up to keep it from turning. Well, it was still turning. I could sit there and turn this shaft about this far back and forth. So I'm pretty sure it eventually spun because the rack and pinion was not centered up to the steering wheel. And not to mention, that's dangerous. I mean, if you had to make a quick maneuver, I mean, this thing could slip. So I don't know what they were thinking. You know, I thought about just getting another universal knuckle and cutting this and then re-welding it back on, because it needed to come up about an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch. But I didn't really want to take that chance, so I just bought a complete aftermarket one that's fully adjustable, and I've got it on there. So I've got it adjusted where it needs to be. Let me turn the light on here. I think it's called a Borgeson, if that's how you pronounce it. A lot of people use these. They're fully adjustable. It's basically it's a double D shaft, they call it. And I've got it all set up. I went ahead and I put a pretty good spot weld on this section. Basically on all the sections. Even though I got the set screws in there, I got them. I got red Loctite on them. I always spot weld them. That way you make sure that nothing comes loose. And then I've got it painted. They actually come. Turn this light off here. They actually come a natural finish, and they will rust. So I clean it up real good after I got done with it, and I sprayed it with some high temp paint. Make it last a while. I'm gonna go ahead and change the oil filter. I got to put the rack and pinion on. I'm gonna lower it down, and then I'm gonna get the springs back in, get all that back done. I should be done here in a couple hours with it. So once we get it all down, lowered on the ground, I'll show you the MSD coil that I installed. Okay, so as you can see behind me, I've got this thing running and it's outside. It's kind of loud, so we even got a plane flying over. It's a little bit windy. You might be hearing some wind noise. I'm going to do a little walk around, let you guys listen to it. It sounds good. It does have a Holley EFI system on it for a Fox body, and I just did the initial startup and sync for the distributor that's on it, and I'm going to get him hooked up with Adam at S&M Motorsports to get a tune on this thing. It definitely needs to be tuned. This thing comes in at about 12.5 to 1 compression, somewhere in there, based off the part number that he gave me for the rotating assembly and the heads on this thing. So the stock tune file on this Holley has got too much timing in it for 93 octane, and I actually told him that the last time he was here. I'm surprised he hasn't blown this thing up, because on 93 octane it don't need to see that much timing up top. So hopefully we can get this thing squared away, get it over to Adam, let him tune it, and it'll probably run a whole lot better. Anyway, I want to turn this around and let you listen to it. Do a little walk around here so you can check it out. It is a nice looking Fox. I'm gonna go ahead and shut it off. Anyway, I'm gonna do a little walk around video on my channel. As you know, this one's on the Savage Productions YouTube channel. Let me get the hood prop here. Got the MSD 6AL on there. That's the coil that I installed. This thing actually had, I showed you before, it had a stock coil up underneath the driver's side fender. That's where they got all the wires tucked. And they had the coil wire running all the way back through here, going down through the hole with all them wires. So we basically put that coil on there. That's the one that I like to use. Nice looking coil. I got a hole drilled, got the 2 wires running through with a rubber grommet. And then they had this, they just had this going through with an open hole, and they had some silicone. I cleaned it up, put a rubber grommet there. And that's the distributor that you seen earlier, MSD distributor that plugs right in. I had to take this off because this cable, this wiring harness is so long, it actually plugs in back here. And I couldn't get in there to cut the zip ties, so I had to take the upper intake off. But it's all right, got it all back together. Call it a wrap. Go ahead and shut this hood down. So this is Friday afternoon, and it's going to rain tomorrow. It's going to be on and off rain. So I'm going to park it inside. He's going to come and get it on Sunday. Sunday's supposed to be pretty nice. It's not going to be as cold as today, but it's going to be dry, no rain, and he's going to come and get it Sunday. So I'm going to meet him up here at the shop so he can come pick this thing up, and he'll be able to drive it around and enjoy it a little bit. Hopefully won't have any other issues with you know, any metal pieces getting down in the oil pan. Had to do, you know, quite a bit of work, and I really would have liked to have taken the lower intake off and maybe even the timing cover off to see if there was an issue. That metal that I found just doesn't look like anything that would be inside the motor. So, you know, there was somebody else had worked on this motor. They did have the lower intake off because it was leaking oil on the back of the lower intake. So they took that intake off and they resealed it, put it back on. Not sure, you know, did something fall down into the lifter valley when they had the intake off? Was the pieces of metal laying on top of the intake, the lower intake, when they pulled it off, fell down in there and they didn't know? You just don't know. But you know, it is what it is. I mean, we got it fixed, got it running again. Hopefully, if there's any metal that's in this motor, I didn't see anything down below at all. I did pull the valve covers off. I looked through there, nothing on top of the heads, and everything looked good. So fingers crossed it won't happen again. If it does happen again, at least it will, we know that it'll shear the distributor gear pin off and kill the motor because of that big ARP oil pump shafts. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Appreciate you guys checking this video out through this journey on this car. And be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, Savage Performance Garage. Trying to grow that channel. I'll leave a link in the description below on that deal. So I appreciate you all checking it out once again, and we'll catch you on the next video.